All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about the Beat generation. And look, these folks weren't just authors. They were rebels, plain and simple. They basically took the rulebook for 1950s America, ripped it to shreds, and went searching for a totally different way to live. And this quote, it just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of what they were all about. I mean, you've got post-war America chasing the whole white picket fence dream, the promotions, the new car, and then you have this small group of writers and thinkers who just hit the road. They were looking for something real.
So, here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to set the scene. What was the world they were rebelling against? Then, we'll meet the key players. After that, we'll dive deep into what they actually believed, how they wrote about it, and maybe most importantly, why we're still talking about them today.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the Beats, you first have to understand what they were pushing back against. So let's picture the 1950s, right? This was a world just packed with strict rules and, a ton of expectations about how you were supposed to live.
Yeah, this was way more than just some book club. This was a full-blown counterculture brewing. They're looking around at this society that's obsessed with, keeping up with the Joneses, and they just said, nope, not for us. They were on a quest for something authentic, something that actually felt real.
So, who were the people at the very center of this cultural storm? Let's meet the writers who didn't just talk the talk, they walked the walk. They didn't just write about the rebellion, they lived it.
Okay, at the very heart of it all, you've got Jack Kerouac. His novel, On the Road, basically became the Bible for the movement. Then there was Ginsberg, a poet whose masterpiece, Howl, was so intense, so raw, it actually got put on trial for obscenity. And you can't forget William S. Burroughs, who was just pushing the boundaries of what writing could even be. Throw in guys like Gregory Corso and their publisher, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and you've got the core crew of this literary earthquake.
All right, so what was this all really about? What were the big ideas that were fueling this whole rebellion? Let's get into the nitty-gritty, the philosophy that really drove these guys.
And this slide, wow, it really captures the two completely different worlds they were navigating. On one side, you've got the classic buttoned-up American dream of the 1950s. It's all about conformity, making money, buying more stuff. But on the other side, you've got the Beat ideal, which basically threw all of that in the trash in favor of something way more meaningful.
So, a huge piece of their whole philosophy was this flat-out rejection of consumer culture. I mean, think about it. The characters in Kerouac's On the Road, they're not saving up for a mortgage or a new TV. No way. They're chasing experiences, human connection, raw adventure. They were absolutely convinced that the best things in life just couldn't be bought.
And, when you turn your back on the material world, it kind of naturally leads you on a spiritual quest, right? But here's the thing. While most of America was finding its answers in a church pew on Sunday morning, the Beats, well, they started looking east.
They just dove fead-first into Eastern philosophies, stuff like Buddhism and Hinduism. In fact, Kerouac's novel, The Dharma Bums, is pretty much a roadmap of this whole spiritual search, exploring Zen through meditation and getting out into nature. And you have to remember, in the 1950s, this wasn't just different, this was radical.
But it wasn't only about rejecting money or exploring meditation. The Beats also shattered social norms. I mean, they believed in this radical kind of honesty. They insisted on writing about the messy, complicated, hidden parts of life. All the stuff that 1950s America was desperately trying to pretend didn't exist.
And let me tell you, they did not hold back. Ginsberg's Howl is just this raw, agonizing scream against a society that he felt was crushing its best and brightest minds. And then you've got Burroughs' Naked Lunch, an absolutely unflinching look at addiction and societal control. They basically took people's private struggles and dragged them kicking and screaming right out into the public square.
Okay, so you've got all these revolutionary ideas, right? But how do you actually get them down on paper? For the Beats, the way they wrote was just as radical as what they were writing about.
Honestly, the best way to get your head around their writing style is to think about jazz music. Seriously, it's spontaneous, it's improvisational, it's raw, it's just overflowing with emotion. They wanted their words to hit you like a great saxophone solo, totally unplanned, in the moment, and just alive.
So, how'd they pull off that jazz-like quality? Well, a couple of key ways. First, they used free verse, which let them break away from all the old rigid rules of poetry. Second, they embraced what's called stream of consciousness, just trying to capture thoughts exactly as they tumble out of your brain.
And third, they painted with this raw, vivid imagery to create an immediate gut punch of emotion. This wasn't writing you just read, it was writing you felt.
So, what was the upshot of all this creative, rebellious energy? Where did it all lead? Let's take a look at the incredible legacy the beats left behind. An echo that, trust me, we can still hear loud and clear today.
I mean, you can draw a perfectly straight line from the smoky coffee houses of the 1950s right to the massive counterculture movements of the 60s. It's not even a stretch to say the Beats basically wrote the playbook for that next generation, the one that would go on to question authority, protest war, and demand a totally different way of life.
Really, their biggest and most immediate splash was on the 1960s. The whole hippie movement, when you get down to it, took the core beat ideals, freedom, anti-materialism, the spiritual quest, and just cranked the volume up to 11 for the whole world to hear. If the Beats were the spark, the 60s were the absolute wildfire.
And maybe that's their real, lasting legacy, Just the spirit of questioning everything. The Beats looked at the rules of their time and had the guts to challenge them, to force a tough conversation about what a meaningful life even looks like. So that kind of leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? What are the unquestioned rules of our time that might be worth a second look?